Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Last week's conversation was a blast. I'm so excited to have you with me for this next segment. Let's get back to the show. Thank you for your understanding on the poor audio quality this week and throughout the series with David Chambliss. Now, as you've gotten up in leadership, as you've experienced different things, I'm sure you look back and think, well, I wish I could have a mulligan on that one. Could you share with us like one problem or one issue you've run up against that you view it like that?
I mean, I need 1,000 mulligans for all of the times in my life where I got in a car after a meeting or, a donor discussion or anything and just thought like, was that the right? I mean, I would just kind of be tough on myself. But obviously, the two things that I think about in terms of a do-over is one area that's you can always do better in is making sure that those that are on your team and also those that you report up to have all the information they need to be successful in their jobs. So I can tell you that many times over my career, I've traveled with either a dean or a president or a vice president or a leader and felt I should have better prepared them for that meeting. There was areas that they didn't talk about, but I didn't tell them to talk about. And I'd leave the meeting and be like, oh, I wish they would have taken it to this, or just prepared more for the meeting. So not necessarily I give them all the information, but sort of said, listen, Tom, this couple's really interested in these two areas. So if we can stay in those two lanes, I think that will really be a productive discussion. If I prepare people for those, then sometimes the conversation can go way off cue, or there's information that was vital to the making sure that the conversation was productive, and that it just in my mind, I felt like, well, I know the information, so everybody's understanding the information. That's one area that I think that's a big do-over. Is there's been many times where I wished I provided more information, and the other one is my personality is like I get comfortable with people quickly. I love meeting strangers and making new friends, and I like within 5 minutes of talking to somebody, I feel like I've known you forever. And I think that there's a lot of benefit to that, especially in development, because I can, build those relationships. But I also understand that that's a double-edged sword, because sometimes you can get too comfortable around a donor or a prospect or in a meeting amongst colleagues, and maybe share more information than you should have about a program or the ever popular, like politics of the day, local, state, government, federal, whatever, geopolitical stuff, where you really should try your best to avoid that. But when you're sitting in somebody's living room and you are asking them about their life and what they're up to and how they feel about the organization for which you're raising money, if it's a college or a, nonprofit or hospital or whatever, you need to be prepared for them to tell you some of their thoughts. And it's not always going to be, you guys are great, I love everything you're doing, how can I support it? They might have some issues with some of the things you're doing, and you have to be okay with that, but also really learn how to manage your emotions and your responses to that. Like, I completely understand why you would be, annoyed by that, or I completely understand why that would impact you. I'm sorry you feel that way, and let me tell you what we're doing. It's easy when you get comfortable with somebody to be like, man, I totally agree. Like, yeah, like that program. And then you think to yourself, I shouldn't go that far with people. You want to be genuine and truthful and respectful, and you also don't want to be like crossing the line or arguing with them. Like, I disagree with your political stance on this. Or like, and that's definitely over time. Like, there's definitely times you get close with somebody who's a donor that says, I really think the football team should be doing this. I'm using a soft here, and you're like, dude, you're crazy. Like, I disagree. And like, sometimes it's fun, but there's other things that are very important, political things and various things that are in the news that you're going, I don't want to go down this path. Like, that's your thoughts, and I respect them, but I'm not in a position to like agree or disagree with how XYZ should happen. And so I could take a few mulligans on those in my day too, where I've decided like, oh yeah, I'm comfortable enough with this guy to tell him like, I disagree, or I agree with this, controversial stance that he has. And then I'm like, like, I hope, I hope it doesn't get back to the president that I said, yeah, I don't think that resident hall looks as nice as, or something funny like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, you always got to be careful there. So those would be the two things specifically that I would take some do-overs on.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think young fundraisers, people just kind of getting into the business, they struggle with these things because they want to be too personal, too agreeable, or too transparent. When really, fundraisers like you and I, we need to be Switzerland.
Yeah.
It's not our job to take positions on. Now, maybe you're with
Yeah.
a political nonprofit,
Yeah.
in that case, yeah, go for it. But if you're representing a large university,
Yeah.
or some other, down the line kind of middle of the road organization,
Yeah.
you don't want to alienate 50% of your constituents.
Yep.
And
Completely.
some people may disagree with that. And I know there's folks even in higher ed that, take issue with things. But I recall talking to a colleague once, and they were concerned because they're like, well, I don't agree with this group of people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's fine, but that's 50% of our alumni base.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
do you want to exclude them? I mean, we can't do that, whether we agree with them or not. If we want to be engaged with our constituents the best we can, we can't start picking and choosing on the basis of things that are, generally accepted in our culture. Right now, I know the folks on the extreme of the left and the right would probably say,
Yeah.
well, there's moral issues with the other side, but that's not great practice as a fundraiser, I would say. Well, moving on here.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, David, about your best discovery, qualification, or even disqualification story.
Yeah. I mean, this one brings a smile to my face because it's almost, it is unfair and it's a development officer's dream. But in terms of discovery, I'll just share with you that 2 years ago, I received a phone call from a number I didn't know, a voicemail from a gentleman I'd never met that wasn't a Vanderbilt alum, who said, can you give me a call back? I'd like to talk about, making a gift to Vanderbilt. And of course, I called him back, like, sure, how can I help? And turns out that he and his wife were very, very interested. They had grandchildren, grown grandchildren now, who have dyslexia, and that he and his wife had taken it on as a philanthropic mission of theirs to really give back to support dyslexia in a way of building schools. And so they had built a school in Florida and built a school in Georgia, and Vanderbilt and Peabody College have the number one college of education in the country and the number one department of special education in the country.
Oh, wow. Oh,
And
that's great.
we have a world-renowned, reading intervention program, and many students come here to go and work in the schools and work specifically with students with dyslexia. And they wanted to connect a school to Peabody College because of our background. They have no background with Vanderbilt at all. Nobody in their family went there. None of their kids went there. Nothing. But they wanted to be a part of Vanderbilt. And long story short is, from that phone call, about 7 months later, we signed the documents to build a new academy and dyslexia center here at Vanderbilt. It was one of the largest gifts in Vanderbilt history. And so we currently have a small transitional school just off campus. It's like 2 classrooms of 21 third and fourth graders, but we're going to be building a much larger school over the next 2 years to open fall of 2026. It's called the Roberts Academy and Dyslexia Center, and it's going to be an academy for kids with dyslexia, and also a research center that is happening simultaneously, where we will do research and bring in teachers to learn best practices and create research. And really, it's just going to be an unbelievable school and opportunity for families. And it's going to be the goal is to make it accessible and affordable to families regardless of background. And
Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Fundraising can be hard work, and it can be hard to mentally get into the place you need to be in order to see new opportunities. Everyone struggles with it. We are like the fish in the fishbowl who just can't see the water they're swimming in. That's when having outside expertise comes in handy. For 25 years, I've been helping nonprofits analyze their challenges, discover new ways forward, and develop clear plans that lead to greater fundraising revenues. Now I am available to help your organization develop the abundant vision it needs to inspire new levels of philanthropy at your nonprofit as well. Check out abundantvision.net to start your journey toward greater fundraising success today. Now, back to the show.
Just the Roberts family are just the nicest people you've ever met, and the impact they're having on families who have children with dyslexia is, I can't imagine anything greater than this. And I received a phone call and said, how can we work on this? And so I obviously called my dean and said, are you sitting down? And she was like, yeah, is everything okay? And I'm like, this gentleman just called and, they're interested in doing this. And then we brought in our chief development officer, and then we brought in like our vice president for business operations. And then we brought in the chair of the Department of Special Education. And we flew down to Florida, and they flew up here, and there's all these meetings. That's my greatest discovery, I think, of all time, was of getting that phone call and taking it from a dream to reality. It was a lot of work to just go from we want to do this to we wanted to make sure that we could follow through on their dreams appropriately and make this amazing. And so we had a lot of behind the scenes conversations about what can we do to make sure that we can fulfill their wishes and make the best dyslexia academy in the country and involve as many people as possible. And it was so fun. And we still to this day, like, have weekly meetings to talk about upcoming events. And we've got the kickoff of the smaller school this October. And then in 2026, we'll have the big ribbon cutting. And that's when you see philanthropy come to life. Like, that is a really awesome, this is important to us. We find that there's a gap in society, that there's not enough opportunities for kids with dyslexia and their families. We want to make a difference. Here's how we can do it with philanthropy. Let's tell us what it takes. Let's do it. And boy, has it been a fun ride since that.
Oh, bad. There's a whole bunch of fundraisers listening to this show right now.
Yep.
Just dreaming that something like that would happen. But you bring up an excellent point, because even though, you picked up the phone. I mean, anybody can pick up the phone, right?
Yeah.
But for every person that picks up the phone, there's a certain percentage of them that either don't know how to or don't take the time to do all the follow-up work that it takes to earn the gift.
Yeah.
Because clearly these are folks that have a passion, they have a generous heart, but it isn't as easy as just picking up the phone. You still got to coordinate. You still have to cast a vision, and you have to do all the things to get them where they need to be to make the gift. So congratulations
thank
to
you.
you for getting that done.
Thank you. I completely agree with that piece of all that it took. And, I really, that one took a huge team effort. It wasn't just me picking up the phone. It was my dean. It was my chief development officer. She was really instrumental in, what are the right steps we need to take to make sure that we're successful and can accomplish this. You can't just, build a school overnight. A lot of people have to be engaged and involved. A lot of Peabody's faculty were extremely helpful. We had a lot of Peabody College faculty came to a lot of meetings and shared the research that they're doing with dyslexia and sort of all that we've been already working on. And honest to God, I could have done none of it without every single person played such a crucial role. Like, when we looked back on the experience, it was like, if it wasn't for this woman, if the dean didn't say this, if the Department of Special Education hadn't already been doing amazing work, would we be able to have helped this family bring their dreams into reality? And I think the answer is no. Like, every single person played like this extremely critical piece of making sure that we can carry this through. And that was so important. And I think fun about my job, that it wasn't like a one-man show.
No, that's great. Now tell me about your best cultivation story, somewhere where you deepened engagement in a way that really impacted the donor's sense of connection to your mission.
Yeah, so in higher ed development, I think the best, and obviously each story is different, but I think the best cultivation is our students. Is I can tell you about our students, I can tell you about our programs, I can show you our buildings, but like when you meet our students, I think that people go like, wow, they're reminded of either their time here or their kids' time here, or they just feel like what an impressive young lady, young man this is to be at this school. And so one of the best cultivation experiences I have is just I used to go to New York City a few times a year, and a group of students, when I was at Ohio State, actually, I would go and bring a group of the students. And I mean, I wouldn't, but they would go with, a couple faculty members, and we would put them in front of some of the alumni in New York City. And just by doing that, we were able to engage some really successful and important alumni, and I feel like I could have told them all day long how great these kids are, how driven they are, how much they want to make a difference. But I was able to bring the students to them, and that I can't tell you how many of our alums have, or Ohio State's alums, wanted to get involved because they met the type of students that Ohio State was recruiting at the business school at the time. And so again, it kind of goes back to, it wasn't just me doing anything. It was like I might have been the person that opened the door and said, hey, Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so, I'd love for you to host a group of students at your office. But the students would just go and say, here's what I'm doing at the university. Here's what I'm hoping to do with my career. Here's the difference I hope to make. And so that was one cultivation story. I thought about a few alums that we were able to secure some nice scholarships from. And a lot of it stemmed from them getting engaged with the students.
Yeah, that's a great lesson, because I think a common mistake that fundraising organizations make is they'll focus their storytelling on what the staff person or the faculty member or what they're doing, and that matters, and it should be told, but it should never be told apart from really featuring, here's the end product. It's great that you got a great faculty member and they taught 100,000 students this year or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But what we want to see is that graduate whose life has changed because of the education they experienced at that school, right? And who's out doing great things. So good for you in making that connection.
Yeah, and I think it was nice too, because a lot of these students, people could see themselves, like it reminded them a lot of their time when they were in undergrads. And you would bring students that were very, very, smart, high achieving, but they would also have a lot of, stories of struggles growing up, or, they might have come from families that didn't have, and because of financial aid or because somebody helped them, they were able to be at, they're able to be at Vanderbilt or Ohio State or any institution because of donor support. And people think like, wow, like meeting this young person and thinking about all the things that they can do in life, and they're able to be in college pursuing their dreams because of financial support. That's a story I can tell, but I can't. It's not as good as me just showing.
That's right.
Let me just introduce you to this young woman, and I promise you're going to want to just like open your pocketbooks. It's amazing.
That's great.
That's all the time we have today. But be sure to tune in next week to hear the next part of this exciting conversation. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together towards major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.